that is in the back come closer, because here is a very empty place and we feel alone. So we won't ask you questions for the moment. Come closer, closer, closer. Okay, thank you. Thank you for moving. Okay. Here is plenty of chairs, so, okay. Well, dear all, welcome to the Innovative Financial Instruments for Green Entrepreneurs in MENA region session. For those who don't know me, I'm Claudia Pani from SwitchMed Green Entrepreneurship Component, and I'm responsible for the activities in access to finance specifically. Well, I assume that you had plenty of opportunity these days to speak with our entrepreneurs, with the switchers. You saw them 1 hour ago having their pecha kucha. You saw the exhibition outside. You saw the marketplace. You are members, most of you, of our community, so you know them extremely well. Maybe you also know that they are facing several problems in order to, let's say, create their businesses and make them working. And one of the main challenges these entrepreneurs are facing is, I'm spoiling, access to finance. So the access to finance is the wall. Most of them have to climb to make their companies growing and working. We know that because we listen to them. And how we listen to them? Making, mapping national and regional exercise together with stakeholders, together with entrepreneurs, together with potential investors, together with financial actors in each country and all over the region. But we also go with the program putting in place a pragmatic approach. We went behind the mere question asked. We tried to create specific tools for entrepreneurs in order to allow them to somehow access to this finance. So we created online tools. We created a specific momentum in each country. We already had 10 Green Startup and Mid-Investors opportunity where we put it together, entrepreneurs and potential investors, in order to make the match among them. And we are still going more forward on this because we had come out with kind of innovative solution that we like to call the Switchers Fund. The Switchers Fund is not a fund yet, I'm still spoiling on that, but is an innovative finance approach that we would like to work more in the future period, and it's something that would like to allow entrepreneurs to pass from one stage to the another in order to pass from the ideation stage to the early stage and growth stage without, let's say, dying in this up tent. So we implemented a first pilot of the Switchers Fund thanks to the support of the OSCE, the Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe. And we had the chance to support with a small grant 6 young, brave, and very innovative entrepreneurs from the region. So all this effort, all this activity that we developed, all these questions, doubts, and questions to the seal, what we have to do to improve the access to finance for entrepreneurs, are collected in this amazing, if you don't have it, is in the marketplace down, regional report that has been done thanks to the support of the UFM.
Thank you very much, Claudia, and thank you very much, everybody. It's a great pleasure indeed to be here today to moderate with you this session. Thank you very much to our guests. As Claudia has already mentioned, this is also a session that serves the purpose of sort of launching this joint publication. We have a very strong and solid partnership on sustainable consumption and production since many years, together with all the group of SwitchMed, and of course access to financing is one of the access that, among others, the UFM is supporting. We are supporting that within the frame of, let's say, wider portfolio, and the recommendation also received specifically from the countries. And of course, I mean, the issues of access to financing was and is and will be part of the future focus. We just had a meeting a few days ago, intentionally done really back-to-back, a working group on environment and climate change, where yet and again this issue comes up, how to tackle access to financing for green entrepreneurs. And again, let's say our support goes, our seed, the sort of support seed funding goes within this wider approach of trying, let's say, to integrate work that is already, let's say, ongoing, facilitating the participation of, let's say, some more countries of the region, and helping, let's say, to build opportunities for, let's say, sustainable growth and also, let's say, integration within the region itself. So, as you mentioned, we have this publication. This is a very first draft. I repeat, it's a draft because the intention is out of this discussion today to get maybe some more feedback, some more integrations, and have it, let's say, printed afterwards as part of a first, let's say, joint effort indeed to explore new tools as the Switchers Fund. So thank you very much, and maybe we can open the floor to our interventions. Thank you very much.
I would ask to each one of you to introduce yourself, and it would be nice to hear who you are.
Thank you, Claudia. Hello, everyone. My name is Gian-Luca Gasparini from SEFEA Consulting and Febea. I worked in the social economy, and I've been helping Claudia and SwitchMed in the past few years alongside my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. I first want to thank SwitchMed, Claudia, and UFM for bringing us here. The Lebanese entrepreneurs and myself, because it's a very important opportunity for us to raise awareness about what is needed in our countries. So I'm country director. My name is Michelle Mouracade. I'm country director of Alfanar. Alfanar is the first venture philanthropy in the Arab world. Basically, what we do is we provide funding, training, and mentorship to social enterprises, including green organizations. And the funding can go up to $400,000. It's mostly grants and repayable grants, but we are also looking to launch an impact fund next summer that will be giving as well convertible loans and equity investment. So we'll be talking about all this during the panel today. Thank you.
So my name is Daniel Sorrosal. I work for the European Federation of Ethical Banks as a policy manager, and I've been involved with SwitchMed and now with the UFM, who was very kind to sponsor our coming, and in producing this kind of condensation of thoughts and experiences over the last 3 years, trying to understand what is out there when you're an entrepreneur and you need finance in the different countries, and trying to somehow distill that into something new that could, let's say, improve the situation. So I hope we can fulfill some of your expectations. And I work together with Gian-Luca. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hala Mujalli. I'm from Jordan. First, I'd like to thank both actually SwitchMed and UFM and everybody who's here actually for your time and support. I'm so happy to be here to talk and share my experience working as a local green entrepreneurship trainer and as a consultant with both UFM and SwitchMed on different activities that targeted enabling access to finance for green entrepreneurs in Jordan. I'm so happy to be here with you all, and I look forward for this session. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Najib Saab. I'm Secretary General of AFID, Arab Forum for Environment and Development. It's a pan-Arab organization with the 22 Arab countries. The headquarters is in Beirut, Lebanon, and we have three main programs. Policy program, we produce annual report on the state of Arab environment, which proposes changes in policies. We have corporate environmental responsibility program with corporations in the region, and we have an awareness and education program. So when I talk, I shall be talking on one of the products of the policy programs. Thank you. And also we are long collaborators with SwitchMed. In our conferences, we always like to have the switchers to come and share their stories. Last week, we had our conference in Beirut, and I told them this morning I received a message from a minister saying that the most refreshing part of the conference were not the EBRD and the World Bank and UNEP, etc., were those young people who gave us hope in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I was part of this conference too. I just okay. My name is Tracy Ashar. I work as a project manager in Viridis Investment Fund Fondation Diane. Fondation Diane was created in 2015. Diana Fadel, she's a wealthy woman in Lebanon. She decided to put all her wealth for the benefit of the environment and to prove that eco-sustainability and profitable are compatible. And currently, we have three main axes. We do awareness for schools and university, and we create debates around topic of environment. And the third topic, the most important one, is the investment fund. We invest only in green startups, any startup that has a positive impact on the environment. And also, we are the local partner of SwitchMed in Lebanon. We developed two access to finance events and how to build the green canvas also for Fortune entrepreneurs. And thank you, SwitchMed and UFM.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and thank you very much to all. Maybe we can now move to a first, let's say, discussion, and I would, just because it was mentioned, let's say, open the session with the presentation of your report, because AFID normally, annually actually, publish a report for the Arab region and on sustainable development. So maybe you want to tell us a bit more and present the publication that was just published. Thank you very much.
Okay. As I said, and as you mentioned, our main product at AFID is an annual report on the state of Arab environment. Now, for the past 10 years, we produced reports on energy, water, climate change, sustainable consumption, etc. And the 11th report this year, after we talked about the problems and we proposed solutions, we thought how to implement them. To implement them, you need financing. So our last report, which was launched last week, was financing sustainable development in Arab countries. Now, the report aims at searching for the needs the resources available and the gaps. So, in general, I shall give you main results of the report. We found that the Arab region, the 22 countries which are members of the League of Arab States, they stretch from very poor to very rich, from North Africa to the Gulf. Some have the poorest in the world. Some have the richest in the world per capita, like Qatar. Some have the lowest ecological footprint, like Yemen, because they don't have enough resources to use, or they don't have access to resources. And some have the highest ecological footprints in the world, like Qatar and UAE. They compete on the first place, Qatar and UAE, as the biggest ecological footprint. And as I mentioned this, as it's a serious conference, but to just make you amused a little bit, 2 years ago I presented AFID report on ecological footprint in Qatar, and we said that that Qatar was the first worldwide in ecological footprint. So one Qatari newspaper, leading one, mentioned it on their front page. Qatar is #1 in ecological footprint. They thought it was something positive to be proud of. So now, okay, going back to figures, we found out in our report that the Arab region needs $230 billion per year until 2030, especially to implement the environmental aspects of the SDGs. Now, how did we calculate this? You cannot calculate it very accurately. We used a calculation which you can compare worldwide. We looked at UNCTAD calculations globally, and we calculated for the Arab region. And as ESCWA were working with us on this, we had to fight a lot with them, because at AFID we have the freedom to do our calculations and to explain how with our experts. UN organizations, many times, they need always references. Even if the reference is not very credible, they like a reference. So this figure was mentioned for the first time, and now ESCWA and the World Bank, they accepted our figure. You were in the conference. They used them even in their presentation. So you need 230 billion annually. The gap, the financial gap, is $100 billion annually. Now, people get afraid. How can we get this money? Most of this money is not fresh money. It should be taken from diverting money spent in the wrong places to be spent in the right places for sustainable development. Also, we found an AFID report also published for the first time, and we said how we did our calculations, that those 22 Arab countries lose every year between $70 and $100 billion for corruption. So imagine if you can fight corruption well, Arab countries, the poor ones, they don't need to get aid from other countries. They can support themselves. And if they can be more efficient. Now, some of you go to the treadmill they run. You know that treadmill, you run hundreds of kilometers, but you stay in your place. Arab countries, sometimes I imagine they are like running on a treadmill, always very tired, but they stay in their place, because other than the needs for sustainable development, Arab countries, we calculated in our report, in cooperation with the World Bank mainly, that they need $900 billion now on the spot just to repair what was damaged because of wars and conflicts in the past 7 years. So you need a lot for sustainable development, but you need much more now to repair the damages of wars and conflicts. Okay. Now, as I said, we don't need all of this to be fresh money. A lot of it can be diverted from the normal budgets of governments and from more efficiency. What are the sources of financing the SDGs in Arab countries, like in other places? You have the normal public budgets. Also, they are not enough at all for so many reasons. You have the international development funds. You have the Arab development funds. Arab development funds, actually, which are either country funds or pan-Arab. The Arab Development Fund, Kuwait Fund, Saudi Fund, UAE Fund, blah, blah, blah. There are many of those, and as per country, they are contributing as ODA more than 1%, which is more than the 0.7% specified for the OECD countries. But still, it is small. Still, it is very small. So, other than those public funds, the private sector contribution to development is very little, because you don't have real incentives in the Arab region for the public sector to invest in development. Now, you cannot expect the private sector to throw their money like this. They need return and they need securities. They are not available. I'll give you a very striking figure which appeared in our report. For FDIs, the foreign development investments, for each $1 which comes to the region as FDI, $1.8 go out of the region as FDI. So the rich countries in the region spend more abroad as foreign development investments than what we get. What is more frightening figure is that, say about money remittances, bank deposits, for every $1 which comes to the region as remittances at deposits, the region exports $2.8 to other countries. You ask yourself why? Because people, the private sector, individuals and institutions, they don't have enough confidence to invest their money in the region. So this should be also solved. Now, official development assistance, ODA. ODA, before 2011, between 2008 and 2011, it decreased, while as of 2011, it increased ODA. The assistance to the region increased from 2011, but this hides the fact that it increased mainly because of assistance which came for wars and conflicts. So it was mostly humanitarian aid, not development aid. Now the private finance coming from abroad, this was a disaster, because imagine in 2008, $88 billion came as private investments in the region. In 2008, we had 88 billion. In 2016, we had 32 billion, less than half. So there is a problem in this direction. We can imagine, I mean, just keep in mind that when President Trump came to the region, he went out with pledges of about 300 billion from all countries, while we didn't hear pledges equivalent of this coming to the region. While this money is given, our organization, which is pan-Arab, and it is intergovernmental, so governments have shares to pay. Some governments, the richest ones, are not paying for the last 3 years because of their commitments to other matters. So it is a real fight against odds. Now, are there positive things? There are some positive things in the region in the last period. I mean, let's say in 2017, the first green bond was issued, I mean, real green bond, by the First National Bank of Abu Dhabi for $587 million. It was really green bond for renewable energy, actually, due in 2022, and we hope it will be followed by others. When we were meeting in Beirut last week, we had EBRD were with us in the conference, and Bank Audi, the biggest Lebanese bank, is AFID member. And during the conference, they signed a green credit line supported by EBRD for $200 million to support green projects. Now we hope, and we are meeting Bank Audi next week, that a lot of this will go to young entrepreneurs. They should be supported because usually those private funds go to more secure things. Okay. Now, also in our report, we encourage stress on the potential of Islamic compliant financing. Many Muslims, they don't like to invest in the international market with interest, etc. But you can issue bonds, sukuk, which are now being issued. More insistence on this. The biggest market of sukuk, of the Islamic bonds, is London. So the British discovered the advantages of this thing. Now, okay, what we are proposing, which started now, it's also positive, subsidies. There is a change in the subsidy regime in the region. They are taking out subsidies on many harmful things, on water, energy, electricity, etc. But they didn't shift to the positive part of supporting the good activities. Now, in Jordan, they gave incentives for hybrid and electric cars. And 2 years ago, more than 50% of the newly imported cars were hybrid and electrical. But then the Ministry of Finance decided that they have to get out of this, they need the money. They got out of it a few months, then the income was much less because people bought much less cars. Now they are back to the program. What we said, the regulation should be stable to give confidence to investors and to the people. You need a regulatory framework. They started with it, but the problem, it's not stable, it's not continuing. Some countries in the region are diversifying the economy, which is good. Shifting from 100% oil to more diversity to other things. It is good. But it is not enough, actually. It is not enough because it's very slow and the changes are governed by economic problems. So you have oil prices go down, then they think that we cannot afford subsidies. We are afraid when oil prices go up, they will forget about the reforms and go back. And I give example, Saudi Arabia, many of the subsidies which were cancelled 2 years ago were returned now to make people happy. So you are buying the loyalty of people by giving subsidies where it is not needed, and most of it go to the rich. One of the main proposals of our report and our conference is to use pension funds, savings, sovereign funds of countries to support the SDGs, not to invest them in other countries, mainly rich countries, and to give more to young people and women exactly like this, because if you just put funds to support SDGs without specifying to whom they go, the young people, women, marginal, won't get anything. So they should get more, they should get incentives, and loans should be supported for long term by central banks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Najib. I think you gave a very interesting regional overview. I think if the publication could be also made available and be provided, would be definitely of very welcome. So I don't know if that is available online or if you can.
You can.
It's available online since yesterday, no? Or since 1 week from the presentation. Yeah.
afidonline.org. When you go to the afidonline.org, you get all the reports, and this is the latest one on the front page. You can download in English or in Arabic.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think really a lot of food for thoughts and maybe also for a bit more of debate later on. Now, maybe we go from this regional dimension to more of, let's say, a national dimension, also through the case studies that we have. Indeed, the publication covered different countries, including Jordan. Hala has been on SwitchMed activities since the beginning, especially on access to financing. You have been also running this specific, let's say, study now for the purpose of the Switchers Fund. So really it would be very good if from this perspective you could a bit enlighten us on the main findings, challenges, but also opportunities. So on a positive note, what you know, we could build up in terms of new financing tools altogether. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you all know Jordan or if you're familiar with the country, Jordan. But just to give you some sense, Jordan is almost 1/5 of Spain. It's basically in terms of population and geographical area. So in Jordan, SwitchMed have been basically supporting green entrepreneurs, and not only entrepreneurs per se, but and UFM also, but also the government to achieve some of progress that we're now witnessing in Jordan. So the key message that I actually came up with after engaging with all different activities in Jordan in terms of green entrepreneurship and greening our economy and the sustainable, developments and whatnot. In Jordan, it's really not a luxury anymore for us to shift into greener economies and greener developments. In fact, it's becoming more of a stressful need. Jordan now depends almost entirely on imported oil for our energy consumption. So now we're like 97% dependent on external oil to produce our energy. We're now competing to get the first place in terms of water poverty. Now we're standing at the second place in Jordan. And yet, on the bright note and the positive note, our population are mostly, I would say, more than 97% of Jordanians are literate. And with a good percentage of this 97% having had higher education. So for us, we have human capital, and we also have our stressful reality of scarce resources, natural resources. And on top of that, we're also a developing country with all the stress on the economy. So our job market isn't functioning as it should be. Graduates, like capable graduates, are actually going out, expecting to find amazing jobs and whatnot, and our job market is not offering that. In addition to, of course, all the pollution and whatnot that you see in basically all around the world nowadays. So SwitchMed for Jordanians, and this is why I'm saying that it's no longer a luxury for us to turn green or to become like green in terms of our businesses or our entrepreneurial behaviors and innovations. So now SwitchMed, actually what SwitchMed brought to Jordan is kind of supporting entrepreneurs of various industries and from various backgrounds to achieve a greener and more eco-friendlier solutions to whichever industry that they're performing under. What we've experienced in Jordan in terms of access to finance, specifically with the green entrepreneurs, is that there is what I call an issue. It's not really a challenge, it's an opportunity for change and an opportunity to improve. our green entrepreneurs' performance. And it's basically the access to market. I mean, any investor in the everywhere in the world would basically target financing or investing in entrepreneurs and businesses that have established access to market and demonstrated it in whichever way. So for the green entrepreneurs, they have all the amazing, beautiful innovations and ideas that they want to really help the world become better, become greener, become more sustainable. But yet, translating the values that they're presenting and that they have into what people, like local communities, can understand is the gap. So basically, if an entrepreneur is providing, is targeting children, for example, as their target market, then they need to kind of translate that into whatever they're producing, be it a service, be it a product, into something fun that kids would appreciate. Then, exactly, and then if they're targeting a different segment, then they need to also translate the values that they're transmitting into something that their market could understand. Hence, our investors would be more than interested to support whichever product or service that we're providing. So, generally speaking, and I would say in conclusion of this contextual insights, we do have mechanisms for financing currently in Jordan for entrepreneurs, generally speaking. Our policies are developing. Yes, we have some setbacks, of course, but I believe that there is great opportunity to actually build on what the government is trying to put together. So for entrepreneurs in Jordan, now we have a solid platform for green growth, generally speaking. It's at policy level, and it's being translated into action plans and supporting actual, the implementation of real projects in the various sectors, right? So for green entrepreneurs, they can definitely grasp on these kind of policies and understand what is available. Like if I'm tailoring a product, then it might as well respond to what the government is pushing for to happen in my country. But it's also very important for entrepreneurs in Jordan in order to access finance, the available financing options, especially that we now have, pretty much developed entrepreneurial kind of platforms, but it doesn't really specifically target green entrepreneurs as we see in other places. But it's also very interesting for green entrepreneurs to actually kind of compete among other entrepreneurs in Jordan. So what is vital, and this is one of the key actually findings from my report, is that green entrepreneurs in Jordan would be very important for them to actually work on their product development, work on their innovation of their design of the products in order to actually provide a more market fit and a more, say, attractive product and overall delivery so that investors would basically hop in and support these green entrepreneurs. So that's kind of a summary of our findings in Jordan. I hope it's relevant.
Thank you, Hala. Thank you very much. Indeed, it was extremely interesting and short, but we can later open the discussion with the public also. I would like to ask to Michelle if you could give us maybe an overview about which are really the main challenges for I like to call them switchers directly, instead of saying green entrepreneurs and social and switchers, basically. So from your perspective and from the Lebanon and Egypt perspective, since you're operating in these both countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So after Najib and Hala's depressing views on the region, unfortunately, I'm not going to be much more positive. situation is very difficult for entrepreneurs in both Lebanon and Egypt in terms of access to finance. And this is why it's so important, the work that SwitchMed is doing in the country, because by raising awareness and by training entrepreneurs and helping them get access to finance, they are helping improve the situation. But there's so much more that needs to be done. And we were just discussing with Daniel how much extra funding is needed in terms of just grants, just to help these organizations grow. So to give you a bit of a better perspective, so Lebanon, for example, does have a sophisticated and well-developed financial system, especially compared to other countries in the region. But that doesn't mean that it's easy for entrepreneurs to access finance from these financial institutions. If we take, for example, bank loans, the interest rates are so high in both Lebanon and Egypt, and I think across the region. Like in Egypt, interest rates can get up to 20%, and they ask for collateral. And so entrepreneurs, it's very difficult for them to get a bank loan, if they even want to get a bank loan, because that's another thing that is important to consider, is that from a cultural perspective, I know at least in Lebanon, but I'm sure it's the same in other Arab cultures, you get a loan when you're in trouble. When you're doing well, you get investors. So when we ask them, would you like our help to access a loan? They say, no, we're okay. We're doing well. We just need money to grow. And so from a cultural perspective, it's also difficult to encourage them to reach out to banks and to get loans. And banks are not aware of the potential of these organizations and of the importance of supporting both social enterprises and green enterprises. So we were very happy to see that Bank Audi and EBRD in Lebanon have made this announcement at the convention, the summit that you organized, that AFED organized, because I mean, it was pushed by EBRD, obviously, but it's very difficult for banks to understand the advantage of financing green enterprises. So this 200 million is going to be very helpful, but as Najib said, we have to hope and to encourage Bank Audi to use this for SMEs and for small green enterprises, not for the very large corporates who very often don't even include the small SMEs in their supply chain. So in the end, they keep all the money for themselves. So this is something that's going to be very important. The other thing is that when you look at the journey of an entrepreneur, often before they get to bank loans, they start with startup programs, accelerator programs, incubator programs, and we're lucky that there are some in the region. In Egypt and Lebanon, there are accelerator programs. Unfortunately, these accelerator programs are very much focused on technology organizations, because for them, they feel that an organization can only scale if it's using technology. And green enterprises often don't need technology, and they can scale very well, but there is this lack of awareness. So they can't even access these accelerator programs. And there aren't enough, because when you think of Egypt, we're talking about a population of 100 million comprised mostly of youth. If there's 20, 30 incubator programs, it's not enough. And I don't think there are that many. There are way less. So that's an issue. And also, it's not because there's these programs that they get funding, because the amounts are very low. In Egypt, it's up to $10,000. Which is very little to start a company. And in Lebanon, sometimes if you're lucky, an accelerator program gives you up to 20 or 30, but it's really not enough. So the other thing is angel investors. And again, it's quite difficult. There are in Lebanon 2 funds that gather angel investors and that help support entrepreneurs. But then when you talk about individual angel investors, there's less than a handful. So it's not enough. So we really need to find a solution to this. Thankfully for entrepreneurs, there's programs like Fondation Diane who are giving funding to entrepreneurs. But we need Fondation Diane to either multiply by 10 or to be replicated, because there's, again, not enough money for the number of organizations that are there. And Alfanar Venture Philanthropy, we also support organizations, but because we are a venture philanthropy, for us, the social impact is as important as the green and environmental impact. And the measurement of this impact is really important. So we need programs like SwitchMed and like Fondation Gian and all the accelerators to help the entrepreneurs understand that, so that when they apply to Alfanar, they are already measuring their impact, they're already on the right track. And we're starting to also provide our own impact training to other programs. This way we can help them access finance. But today, a lot of the green entrepreneurs don't realize enough the importance of measuring their impact. And to not paint a completely bleak and depressing picture, there are some good news, and the good news is that impact investors are coming to the region. They are starting to be more and more interested in the country. They are talking to us, they're talking to Fondation Gian, they're talking to a lot of organizations, and they're asking us, how can we come with our millions, because they want to bring millions to the country to support entrepreneurs. And we need the entrepreneurs to be ready for that. So we need them to be measuring their impact, but we also need them to grow. Because the impact investors, they're not going to support a startup, and they're not going to support an organization that just has 2 years of experience. So what we need is programs like the Alfanar Venture Philanthropy Program and Fondation Gian to take them to a level where they can access the impact investor money. So this journey is really important for entrepreneurs to access finance. They need to go to programs like SwitchMed, they need to go to accelerator programs, they need to talk to Fondation Gian, Alfanar, and then eventually they will get the big impact investor money, but we all need to support them. Right now it's very, very difficult for entrepreneurs to get to that stage, and a lot of them are unfortunately closing down. And some of them are huge success stories. I don't know if you were at the panel yesterday at 4 p.m. There's a social enterprise, a green social enterprise called Fabricade that comes out of Lebanon. Hussam is here. And basically what is great with an organization like Fabricade is that they applied to a competition, the Global Social Venture Competition by Stanford University, in front of 550 applicants from across the world, and they were the winners. So this means that there is talent in the Arab region, there is talent in the Mediterranean region, and they have 1 year of existence. If we don't help them access finance beyond Alfanar and Fondation Gian, then they're not going to be able to grow. And they have the potential with their business model, and a lot of entrepreneurs is the same, to replicate across the region and even internationally. So we have to help them get there. It's very important.
Thank you very much, Michelle, also for underlying, let's say, the situation in Lebanon, and actually sketching out a more positive picture, maybe than you yourself believe. I think you have given a lot of, let's say, views on the indeed opportunities that are there within our, you know, within a wider, let's say, range of opportunities than just the national one. You mentioned a lot, actually, the Gian Foundation, so I think it's really the right moment to give the floor to Tracy. Of course, you are a very prominent environmental impact investor in the country, and it would be good, actually, if you also can share your reflections on how indeed the green entrepreneurs can grow their business, can scale up their business, and maybe also underline how you are yourself, you know, seeing all that and supporting all that.
Okay, first, Michelle covered a lot about the opportunity that I have to talk about the opportunities that are in the countries. But before, I want to just mention a small challenges that I found about social entrepreneurship in our region and environmental entrepreneurs in Lebanon. That most of the entrepreneurs, they produce products from from recycled material, but the price of the product is very, very expensive, or the organic line, or the organic fruits or vegetables. And also they have to think about the market. It's not to be green, it's not a luxury, it's an attitude of life. And we have to, even for the entrepreneurs, to think about the market. In Lebanon, 30% their wealth is under $10,000 or their wealth. So that we are a poor country, so we have to think about the customers. This one challenge, I want to add it. And from the opportunities of social entrepreneurs in the country, first for a green entrepreneur, he has to know the stage of his business or her business. If you are in early stage or in the adjacent phase, don't come to investors. You have to go to friends, families, fools, people believe in your green people, that they believe in your story, that they give you 1,000 everyone, and maybe a gentleman agreement that you will return them the money after a year or two, but don't come to investors. When you come to investors, it means that you will marry a new person, or you will marry for a lifetime. So, and if you are also in adjacent phase, it's good to go and to have mentors. In Lebanon, we have a list of mentors that they are always available, at least in our community in Beirut Digital District. So it's accessed online. If you are from Lebanon, you can go and meet a lot of people. It's important to listen and not to do what they will tell you to do, but at least to listen to people. You will enlarge and you will change your business plan, your thinking attitude. And as a next step, there are many competition in the region and the international competition about green startups or social startups. It's good to be connected from all the countries and to participate as much as you can, even if you will lose one or two or twice. But you will get experience, you will get exposure. And I think many of entrepreneurs, yesterday they shared with me the stories, how they tried many times for the business to succeed. So they tried more than 3 or 4 times. I have here an example of what is. After the competitions, here you can go to microfinance to get a small loans from microfinance institutions. And there are many also microfinance in Lebanon institutions. I don't know of the Arab countries. The last step is to go to investors. The last step, when you really know your business plan, when you really know your market, when you really know the right amount that you want to ask for. Because you will ask once, and when you partner with an investor, you will ask one, they will give you the money, but when you failed, they will not follow. But when you succeed, they will follow. Impact or non-impact investor, they look for profitability. Even if we are as an impact investor, for sure we look for the environmental criteria, and we work also with entrepreneurs on the life cycle assessment and how he has to reduce the impact on the negative also impact on the environment, and how he has to increase the positive impact on the environment. But at the end, we need numbers. If a business is not profitable, it means it's not a business, even if it's impact or none. So I think I covered all the institutions in Lebanon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, very, very important points. And in a certain way, these have been tackled. If we can go back and link also with the report that we are presenting here, and maybe Gian-Luca can also more specifically link it also to the green entrepreneurs paradox that the report itself describes. So link with what
Thank you, Alessandra. So yeah, first of all, I'm very interested in this discussion, and I'm also glad to hear what I've been hearing, because it validates what we wrote in this report. So it means that something was right. And yeah, so just to build on what was already discussed, what we saw from the green entrepreneurs indeed is that there are some ideas that are quite innovative, and most of all, they're not just innovative per se, but also can have a specific benefit for their country and the environment and society as a whole. So this is really something that, as already discussed beforehand, is a proof that green entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs are needed. The second point, which goes back to the paradox, is that it is still, when we were traveling around the countries, trying to discover more or less the financial ecosystem in some of these countries, the idea of green entrepreneurship was not really something that was quite, they were aware of. So there is this need for green entrepreneurs, but there is not awareness of what they are needed for, more or less. So this was one thing that really struck us in this sense. And the fact also that we discovered over there when we spoke with entrepreneurs was that it was difficult for them also to be aware of all the financing opportunities in their countries. Because they were aware, for example, that there was a bank that was next to their own business, but they were not aware that maybe a little further down the road there was someone else who was more attentive and who was more able to listen to their ideas and support them maybe in another way. So this is something that was quite widespread in the countries. And another thing that I wanted to add also to what was discussed was another challenge by the green entrepreneurs was the fact that they were quite, they had a difficulty not just to start an enterprise, but also to close down an enterprise. So in case it was not successful, an enterprise, they would incur in a long period of bureaucratic hurdles. They had to pay taxes. They had a lot of trouble in that. That's why oftentimes the more, let's say, smart entrepreneurs, so to speak, would open an enterprise abroad and then maybe start operations in the country. So this is more or less what some of the paradoxes that we found, and we try to put some of these in this report. Yeah,
and in operational terms, just because this morning it was mentioned also that Toshe gave this first financing, there were some grants launched, but also assigned. Maybe you can also tell us a bit more about the process, how the call for application was done, and who finally got it, and based on which principle.
Okay, yeah, so again, to try to finish my intervention on a more positive note again. So we, alongside SwitchMed and of course Daniel, we have found some ears who listen to us in the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And we developed a project called the OSCE GEMS Award, in which we awarded 6 entrepreneurs, one per each target country, like from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Israel, and Jordan. And we provided them, after a selection process, of a small grant of 15,000 euros for their own business. So we launched basically a call for proposals where people from these countries could apply. There were some kind of criteria to adhere to. For example, there was an age limit, maximum 35 years old, because we wanted to, also in the eyes of the funders, to try to foster young, sustainable entrepreneurs. And we were quite pleased with the response. We had around 400 applications received, of which 240 were the ones with the full documentation and were like the admissible ones. Afterwards, we had the 2-step selection process, in which we then selected the final 6 entrepreneurs. And we were pleased also to find that The quality of the applications were quite good. In some cases, we had a full developed business plan for these funds. And also, among the criteria, we asked for a social and environmental impact in order to be, let's say, coherent with what we promote in the Mediterranean. And mostly these funds were used for, in some cases, for get some materials to increase production. I was happy to speak with the Algerian winner who is here, and he told us that he was able to double the production of dates in his firm. And then, for example, there are some people who need the money to hire people because they were interested in expanding their own production. Others were more interested in further developing their own prototype for their own devices, for example, solar panel productions. And we also managed to, the OSCE was so happy with this that also invited the entrepreneurs in Vienna to have like a ceremony in front of the, oh, there you go, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we were there, and they were really, you could feel really the enthusiasm of these people, and we were really happy. And they gave us a lot of also motivation and inspiration to try to help them in the future. That's why we are in talks with the OSCE to try to replicate this a second time. And we really hope to receive many more great ideas from this part of the world that's much interesting and has much potential. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gian-Luca. Is working? See or no? Yeah? Okay. So thank you, Gian-Luca, and inshallah for the second phase of the of the ocean. Allow me to go quickly back and present you these marvelous slides and run a little bit because we are running out of time. So if you don't mind, Alessandra, I would just ask to Daniel Sorrosal to explain what is this. But not only what is this, basically all the work done so far in the last 3 years, what we achieved, because we achieved a lot also together, and what we would like to achieve in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. It feels like not a lot to show for 3 years' work, just a graph. But I'm happy to hear that a lot of the things that we encountered over the last 3 years somehow have been mentioned here. And we didn't meet before for the most part, so you kind of reassure me and Gian-Luca on what we were doing. But I would like to paint a slightly more positive landscape. I agree there are many problems in the Arab world. I mean, I was in Dubai 3 weeks ago, and I was amazed by the ecological footprint that you see everywhere, but the amount of resources that are just thrown out of the window, the amount of air conditioning, the amount of water, the amount of everything that seems to be just used for not a lot of purpose. But besides that, when we started this work, we came from a basic premise, which was to say, real entrepreneurs in the Mediterranean probably will have problems to find money, and we have to find a way to get them this money, and we're going to go with a very European hat, finding out what is out there. Probably there will be not much, and we're going to have to bring it from Europe to give it to them. So a very patronizing kind of type of view. And while we were in this process, we thought, actually, we have to test first the case of what is really out there. So we went, it was about a week's time in every country, and we sort of had a long chat with all kinds of financiers that we could come across and that would welcome us. So we talked to less foundations, because we didn't consider them as much in the beginning as financiers, but more like we talked to banks, we talked to venture capital funds, we talked to some of the incubators, we talked to investment funds, and we talked to public programs, and anybody that was financing. And generally, I must say, the welcome was actually very positive. They were curious to find out, what is this thing about green entrepreneurship, and who are these people? How come I never came across them before? And surely I don't have a product for them, but the door was literally never closed. I think in one case, we were brought to the top floor of the bank where the general manager told us, I think it was in Egypt, that they were not interested. And we took it as a, as a sign. But generally the welcome was actually positive, I must say. With all the complications that come along in terms of instability in the law, crisis, economic issues, etc., etc., etc. But what we found out is that there is a sophisticated, if you want to say, financial ecosystem in most of the countries that is actually liquid, that they actually have more money than projects, so they tend to actually invest abroad, strangely enough, as it was mentioned. And that those people were probably open for a proposition later down the line. And the first question is, okay, how many entrepreneurs there are? How much money they need? Are they profitable? Are they sustainable? And to be honest, we were talking only to the financiers and not to the entrepreneurs, so at a certain moment we had to stop the process and start engaging the entrepreneurs as well to actually try to get the other side of the picture. And we realized that there was a big disconnect between the two worlds. So the entrepreneurs don't know the financiers don't know the entrepreneurs, and the money is actually available. So, but available in very difficult forms. So available in very high and expensive loans that require more collateral than the loan, and it would take 12 months in certain countries to be processed, and a lot of hurdles on the way. But potentially the money is available, and it doesn't need to come from elsewhere. It's already there. The question is how to mobilize it, which is a question everybody's posing itself. How do you mobilize more private money into financing either public policy or the output of public policy? Basically, there is not enough public money available. We need private money. Some of this private money could be mobilized, and you have somehow to find the mechanism. In this case, we have a very good hook, which is the entrepreneurs themselves, which are coming with ideas that are new, that are different, that are creative, and that do respond to societal needs that may not be always on the top of everybody's mind, but everybody realizes that there is a scarcity of water in Jordan. Everybody realizes there's too much garbage out in the streets of Cairo that could be used for something else. Everybody realizes that a certain amount of issues are plain to be seen. I mean, you don't need to explain very long. So then we were faced with a different problem. You can find maybe ad hoc solutions at national level by just putting people together, and I think SwitchMed did a very good job in doing all the impact investors meet switchers events, which I think were quite successful. And already the fact of launching them marks, let's say, a path to follow. And we were given the task of trying to think more systemically, which is not easy because you were talking from Morocco to Lebanon with very different realities, etc., etc. And we realized as well that there could be a lot more venture philanthropy or philanthropy investment money out there, which is not necessarily in the Arab countries, that could be attracted, but it needs kind of a platform to land. There are too few operators in the countries today that are doing any serious financing, besides grants and kind of, let's say, fools and friends. After that, it becomes very hard. And yes, you can go to a microfinance institution, but it's not a solution for everyone. And you could go to a bank later down the line when you are profitable, but probably by that time you don't need a bank anymore. And you could go to an investor at the very last, if you have a very good plan, but chances are only few will make it that far, and only few will qualify to their criteria. So what we try to think is that maybe we have to take it as a kind of slow cooking process. This is not high-tech, it doesn't develop in a snapshot, it doesn't become profitable very quickly, and maybe the returns financially, the promise is not attractive enough on the financial side, but there is a societal side to be played. So we try to, it's written in French, but I mean, I wrote it, so I know it. What we try to see is that we have to come up with a mechanism that on the one hand puts the entrepreneurs in the center as pioneers that can inspire other entrepreneurs. Because in the end, you have to build critical mass. If you don't have enough things to finance, no financier will move. Because it simply doesn't add up in the economics, no? But not only you have to sort of produce more entrepreneurs, but you have to sustain them alive for enough time. And there is where the mentoring, the coaching, the incubators, and all this sort of public money ecosystem, and sometimes private, can be very helpful into allowing those projects to become gradually companies that become gradually, let's say, investable businesses. So this is a process, it's not a snapshot approach. And at the same time, we feel that sometimes the jump from being, I have a great idea, to have a business that runs, it's not an easy path. And probably you need a combination of financial tools that sort of gradually bring you from the grant world into the investment world, and maybe the jump has been done one step after another. So the idea of the Switchers Fund, what we came up with, it was like, okay, we need a platform that can sort of bring, let's say, national players together with international players under, let's say, aligned principles, and with the goal of sustaining green entrepreneurs, or switchers in this case. And at the same time, we have to develop a gradual process in which a company might get a grant day one. If it grows, this grant might become a convertible type of loan that you will only pay if you succeed, and then it becomes a proper loan, and then eventually become an investment, probably a minority investment, so that you can attract other investors by proving that it works. Because in the end, it's about proving to the financier that this can work, following a financial path they can understand. So this is a bit, it doesn't sound like much, but it took a long time to come up with, because unless we apply this sort of patient capital approach, we will either force people to go through the fast-track startup world, which might kill them in the process, or we will also force people to become ever dependent on grants, which is also not a solution. We have to find a transition, let's say ecological as well, but a financial transition, let's say, from being grant-based to being private-based. Unfortunately, a lot of the ideas that are being developed in Europe, which could be very easily exported, do not exist. There is not enough public money invested, as it is in Europe, to allow that transition by combining guarantee programs with investment, by putting private and public working together, etc. But I think that if we can find at least enough willing actors to sustain an initiative like this, the traction will prove that there is more out there than people think, and at the same time that when there is more out there than people think, that we can actually mobilize the local money that is already there. But to a certain extent is waiting for ideas, to a certain extent. I'm not saying easily, but it is waiting. And we didn't see really anybody who told us we wouldn't invest in this. It was all about the conditions. It was all about the potential profitability. It was about the risk. It was about understanding. We don't understand the industry. We don't understand the risks. So I think there is a lot of work to be done in a kind of this slow cooking process, and I think SwitchMed can play a great role in that, in not only preaching the good word, putting people, let's say, out in the front, confronting people of two worlds that don't understand each other. I remember the case I think we were in Tunisia, and we had gathered all the switchers, and one guy was saying, like, I have a pedagogical farm, and the banks don't want to finance me. I said, well, maybe you shouldn't go to a bank. Maybe you need to know what is available for you, and you just went to the wrong door, and you got it as a no, and you assume that everything else will be a no, when it's actually not potentially the case, because I just spoke to a guy who was interested in that. So I think there is a lot of matchmaking to be done, but also I think we have to prove it through practice, that this we can take, let's say, people from A to Z, let's say, in gradual stages, by helping them to grow, because it's really growth in the end that will allow sustainability and will attract finance. So maybe I'm just saying something quite obvious, but we think this is probably the most logical process given this context. That it cannot be fast, and it cannot be huge amounts of money at first, because then it will be sort of probably underused. And at the same time, it cannot be too little, because if it's too little, we will just lose people on the way. So we have to find this sort of right balance. And we need friends on this. I mean, I make an open appeal. Anybody who wants to support it is very welcome, because it will be time-consuming and requires patience to persuade people that investing in green and investing in social not only makes sense, but it's actually a good investment.
I want to say something that's very important in the Arab region. This work that you've done, Daniel has mentioned, of going to the financial institutions, educating them, and talking to them. For you, it sounds like it's okay, just a conversation. But in the Arab world, when someone from another country comes and tells them best practice, it's so much more relevant than if I, a Lebanese person, go and tell the bank, this works, we encourage you. Even if I give them all the facts, all the statistics, I'm just another Arab person. Whereas if someone from Europe comes or if someone from the US comes, then they will really listen. And you can see that when you look at the investments in tech startups. Between 2013 and 2017, there was $900 million invested in tech organizations across the Arab world. Why? Because they know it's been proven outside of the Arab world that tech organizations are worth investing in. So we really need the foreign people to come to the Arab region and to educate them. It really helps.
Yeah, I totally agree what Michelle said, because it's exactly the same. It's happened in all, not even only in investment, but in any programs. If the program comes from the European, we will accept it, but if it comes from us, the partner will not accept it also. So, yeah, but just I want to add something, that it's important that to show to investors, non-impact investors, because also we did the same study in Lebanon, and we talk with many financial institutions, and all of them, they really like green, and they become the greenest on the planet. And when we send them a project, they see only the numbers, and we need as an entrepreneurs to show them why it is the right time to invest in this project, and why it can be scalable, and how we can substitute for the current problem, what are the solutions that are available, and how the solution of a green entrepreneurs, it is better in terms of environmental impact to the current solutions available in the market. So just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is also a question from the floor, so maybe you have.
Hello, I'm Sally Hafiz Bahgat, a founder of Oasis Community Center, the winner of the Best Green Project in the Mediterranean by SwitchMed. Actually, I don't have a question. I'm just a little bit disappointed because, yeah. No, thank you that you are here, and thank you for supporting us. But I have a problem in restricting fund to age. My organization, Oasis Community Center, trained more than 3,000 school students and more than 1,000 youth, university students. My team is around 11 or 12 from the youth. I'm now 44. If SwitchMed thought that we will restrict competition to age, I wouldn't have been standing in front of you. And I was trained by Goldman Sachs and 1,000 women in Harvard. If they thought that we restrict training of the women to age, I wouldn't have completed my project in Oasis. I believe in you. If you want to support women in Middle East and in North Africa, actually, we don't find our complete liberty in doing what we want as an entrepreneur, as a different business and different project. We don't find our liberty except when we are a little bit older, that we can step and say, sorry? I have no age restriction. Super, yes. But they have an age restriction for the fund. Yes.
Okay, I feel you were talking to me. Okay.
I'm talking to you, and I'm talking because when I started Oasis, I thought I need help. I applied for more than 40 fund persons, and they all rejected me because I was 40 years.
Okay. Yeah. I hear you, and I no, you don't look, by the way, 44.
44 now.
But getting a bit more serious now. The issue in this case is not an issue. I mean, we got this money not from the SwitchMed project, not from any other, let's say, SwitchMed related project. This was money that was provided to us by the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, and the Italian delegation, who was also one of the project managers for our prize, was from the youth office of the OSCE. That's why they asked us to have this age restriction. We discussed a bit more to try to increase the limits. Before it was 30 years old, we improved it to 35, but no, if it were for me, I would have made it available for everyone. But unfortunately, it was a requirement from the funders. So we just managed this prize. Okay, sorry. Daniel, yeah.
To be fair, we saw applications where we knew the person applying was the youngest in the team. And we let it pass. It's also the Mediterranean, you know.
Questions. I'd like to add one thing building on that, actually. I'm so happy that you raised that, because a lot of entrepreneurs were disappointed as well in Jordan. But what I actually always make sure that everybody grasps is this is one of the major issues with depending on grants, basically. This is why we're looking at different mechanisms for financing entrepreneurs and, say, environmental or eco-innovations, generally speaking. The problem with grants is that, I mean, it's not free money. There's no such thing as free money. So every grant comes with a set of objectives and a selection criteria. And it's just unfair to actually restrict all the innovations and all the efforts that people are putting together into, like, say, one category, especially when we're dealing with something like societies and environment and local economies and whatnot. So this is why it's very important that we don't really depend on grants per se, but we look further, like, beyond. And this is why I'm always, like, focusing on access to market. Bring value to people that people can actually understand, rather than just go knocking on the grants doors. It's not sustainable, right? So all the best, basically.
I will say something so we can close the session. I'm sorry, I don't want to be accused that I was the one keeping you closed without food. So lunch is downstairs, and you are welcome to come back to the session at 2 o'clock. Thank to everyone for being here, first of all, and it has been a pleasure meeting you in your countries, and it will be a pleasure to work with you again. Just one thing that I would like to stress is this approach, collective and approach that we are starting to build around the entrepreneurs. We put the switchers in the middle of our attention, and what we are trying to do is focus all the ecosystem in the switchers. We are trying to attract all the stakeholders, business support organizations, foundation, investors, accelerators, incubators, all of them turn around their attention to the switchers. The switchers have to prove to be successful. So we need to do this together, and we in this way we will push the pipeline we have. We have a pipeline of 500 entrepreneurs, more or less, in the region. We push them to be successful, and only proving that, we will be able to attract more and more and more investments. So this is what we are facing in the next phase, and we would like, as much as possible, stakeholders and potential people interested in supporting us with technical assistance, maybe some extra funds, knowledge to go and switch really the mad. Thank you very much.